A huge thank you to distinguished wildlife photographer and author Julie Argyle of Wild Love Images for allowing us to show her moving video of a Yellowstone wolf pack. It was a beautiful tribute to open our webinar tonight. Welcome everyone. My name's Carol Miller from the 06 Legacy.
Hi, and I'm Suzanne Asha Stone with the International Wildlife Coexistence Network.
The 06 Legacy is a nonprofit organization that seeks to protect American gray wolves from trophy hunting and trapping. We work to promote wolf recovery by educating the public and supporting pro-wolf legislation. Inspired by the extraordinary Yellowstone Wolf 06, our organization is composed of wolf enthusiasts, advocates, and guardians who envision a world in which wolves and humans coexist peacefully and respectfully.
Thanks for sharing that beautiful video, Carol. It is just stunning. And I know a lot of people were asking in the chat just, how they can get a copy of it. So we'll include that at the end. I want to tell you a little bit more about the International Wildlife Coexistence Network. We are celebrating our first birthday this month. We are a nonprofit organization that brings together scientists, agricultural managers, researchers, ethicists, economists, government specialists, tribal leaders, educators, technical engineers, and all these wonderfully talented people to come together to help pioneer new ways to live peacefully with wildlife. And when possible, we connect those experts with communities on the ground around the world and helping transform wildlife conflicts into viable, non-violent, sustainable solutions. And that's the whole goal behind the organization, is to help to bring these resources and network together. We also manage the Wood River Wolf Project in Idaho, which is one of the world's biggest long-term non-lethal field study of wolves and livestock sharing the open national forest and the very rugged terrain in central Idaho. And we're testing non-lethal methods to minimize wolf and livestock conflicts there.
We want to thank you for being here. There's no greater honor for us than spending time with people who have been touched by wolves and advocate for their future. Tonight's webinar is a call of action for all wolf advocates and activists to unite for wolves at this very critical time. Wolves in the northern Rocky Mountain states of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming are being killed in staggering numbers. Recent legislation in Montana and Idaho have led to unprecedented killing of wolves in the last century. And sadly, not even the world-renowned Yellowstone wolves are safe.
All of us have great concerns, and we want to know how we can help, all of us. So whether you've been an activist for 30 years or you've been an activist for a day, an hour, all of us have a role to fill. So it's really time just to roll up our sleeves and get to work. There is no doubt that united as a pack, we are a powerful force for wolves. And we can do that today by going to the chat, copying the 2 Take Action links that are there, where we hope you will comment to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and send an email to Secretary Deb Haaland. If you don't know what to say, you're going to find out before we finish tonight, because we have a lot of information to share with you.
And it's my privilege to present 3 distinguished speakers tonight. We'll start off with Rick Lamplugh. We'll be discussing the plight of wolves in Yellowstone and Montana. Next will be Suzanne Asha Stone discussing the plight of wolves in Idaho. And finally, Dr. Adrian Trevis will present the state of the science about liberalizing wolf killing. So we'll start off with Rick. Rick lives in Gardner, Montana at the north entrance of Yellowstone. He writes, speaks, and photographs to protect wildlife and preserve wild lands. He's the author of 2 award-winning books about Yellowstone. His latest adventure is Love in the Wild, a weekly newsletter he writes to excite the mind and warm the heart. Rick will be discussing the impact of new Montana legislation on Yellowstone wolves. All yours, Rick.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And, Gardner, Montana, where I live, is ground zero in the controversy over killing or protecting wolves. Gardner, as many of you know, sits at Yellowstone's North Gate and depends economically on tourists. Many come to watch wolves. Gardner also sits in Montana Wolf Management Unit 313, where hunters and trappers come to kill wolves. Wolves and this controversy claimed many chapters in both of my books, about Yellowstone, but I also have an on-the-ground view. I hike and ski in Yellowstone and in Unit 313. So there are many views on whether to protect or kill wolves, and I want to look tonight at Montana's wolf hunt from a wolf's viewpoint. You know, in mid-September, as Montana's wolf hunting season begins, snow can fall, temperatures will definitely drop, and Yellowstone's elk start to slowly migrate toward lower elevations and the park boundary. Now, wolves feed their families with elk, and they follow their food out of Yellowstone and into units 313 and 316. Both are adjacent to the park's northern border. And there, wolf hunters lie in wait. Some scan from their pickup trucks for migrating elk and hungry wolves that follow. So on September 17, just days into this year's hunting season, hunters killed 3 wolves in 316. Those wolves belong to Yellowstone's Junction Butte Pack. Their territory is near the park's invisible border. Now, last year, hunters could take only 1 wolf in 316, but that quota was abolished when Montana declared war on wolves. In October, elk hunting season begins, and 313 becomes crowded with humans and hunters with elk tags. Many also carry a wolf license that only cost a resident an extra $12. New legislation allows each hunter to take up to 10 wolves in a season at just $12 a wolf. Most park wolves have grown up in a protected area where humans don't represent danger. Park wolves are used to pickup trucks and humans watching them through harmless spotting scopes. But in 313 and 316, the watching is through scopes attached to deadly rifles. On October 10, rifles killed 2 wolves from the Phantom Lake Pack in 313. That pack's territory actually overlaps the northern border. Last year's quota in 313, 1 wolf. But that quota was also abolished. And with no quotas in either unit, I see a lot more hunters, and wolves face a lot more killing. On November 19, the Phantom Lake Pack lost another member in 313. So far, 4 times as many wolves have died in 313 compared to 316. One reason is that 313 is cut by more roads. Hunter access is easier. By late November, those roads are less crowded as the general elk hunting season ends, but I still see hunters looking for wolves. And wolves still have to feed their families. They're still looking for elk, migrating from more snow to less snow, from higher elevations to lower elevations, from inside the park to outside the park. Park wolves that live near 313 and 316 spend only about 5% of their time outside the park. Unfortunately, that 5% is usually in late fall during wolf hunting season. And when park wolves make that rare journey into Montana, they enter a death trap designed and operated by Montana's governor, Montana's legislature, Montana's Fish and Wildlife Commission, and Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Online hunting regulations describe Montana's death trap in really disturbing detail. During the 6-month season, one person can take up to 20 wolves, 10 by hunting, 10 by trapping. And it's legal to kill any wolf, including pups. And since wolves are not considered food, a wolf can be left to rot in the field. And Montana gave hunters an expanded killing kit. They can use bait and amplified electronic calls on private or public land. And on private land, they can hunt at night and use artificial lights, thermal imaging, or night vision scopes. Thermal imaging and night vision, those are tools soldiers use in combat. Clearly, Montana has declared war on wolves. And Montana, unfortunately, is winning this one-sided war as hunters use all their tools to take ever more wolves. By December, as winter snow and below freezing temperatures settle in, I see hunters when I ski in 313. Some are in pickups, keeping warm, using binoculars to watch the elk, and spot wolves looking for a meal. And they're finding wolves. On December 10, 3 more members of the Junction Butte Pack were killed. On December 13, the Phantom Lake Pack lost 2 more members, and the park now considers that family eliminated. On December 16, Yellowstone Superintendent Cam Shawley sent a letter to Montana's governor, Greg Gianforte. He asked Gianforte to stop the killing in 313 and 316. He asked that the quota that had limited the kill for the last decade be reinstated. Well, Gianforte didn't respond directly to either request. Instead, he wrote back that the Fish and Wildlife Commission was monitoring the hunt and would respond according to Montana's new wolf hunting legislation. Now, what Gianforte didn't say was that he had stacked that commission with members who support his anti-wolf views. He also didn't say that the commission killed the quota, even though doing so was not required by legislation. So instead of stopping the killing, Montana sent in reinforcements. By late December, 313 and 316 were open to trappers using leg hold traps and neck snares. Now, snares had previously been illegal, but new Montana laws changed that. With one $20 license, each trapper can take up to 10 wolves. That's $2 a wolf. And hunters and trappers can now be reimbursed, if that seems like too much of an expense, for killing with a $500 bounty per wolf. Yet more incentive to kill. On January 1, a collared 3-year-old from the Wapiti Lake Pack, 1234M, was killed in 313. Perhaps he was dispersing, following a biological urge to find a mate and produce young, since breeding season begins in January. Of course, wolves are hunted during their entire breeding season. That's when they travel more, they howl more, they're more obvious in the snow, and they become easier targets. And the loss of a breeding wolf can reduce the size of a wolf pack for an entire year, as Adrian will explain in just a few minutes. So a wolf may walk out of the park into 313 or 316 seeking a mate anytime, day or night. It will howl, "Where are you?" And a wolf hunter with an amplified call can push a button and howl right back. The hunter may have set out bait, let's say an elk carcass, to attract a wolf. And since it's nighttime and on private land, that night vision scope is ready. The wolf howls again. The hunter returns the howl. When the wolf steps from the cover of trees into a clearing, another Yellowstone wolf will become a casualty in Montana's ugly, one-sided war against wolves. We have to stop this. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. That was really, really powerful, very informative. Next up, we have Suzanne Asha Stone. She has more than 30 years of direct experience with Northern Rocky Mountain wolves. She was on the Yellowstone, Idaho wolf reintroduction team, assisting with the release operations in Idaho in 1995 and the capture efforts in British Columbia in 1996. Based in Idaho, Suzanne is a co-founder of the Wood River Wolf Project, which began in 2008 and ever since has been on the forefront of promoting the coexistence of livestock and wolves by proactively using non-lethal measures to prevent wolf and livestock losses. She is working with wolves and other keystone species coexistence projects around the world today in her role as the executive director of the International Wildlife Coexistence Network. Suzanne will be discussing the critical state of wolves in Idaho.
Thank you, Carol. And thank you, Rick. That just takes your breath away, doesn't it? I am going to turn our attention to Idaho right now, and I'm guessing that there's quite a few people that may not know a lot about Idaho, but I think it's important to compare what's going on in our state with what's happening outside in the region. At one point in the Northern Rockies, Idaho contained the largest population. It was the core population for the wolves here in the region. And it's because we have some of the most beautiful, amazing wilderness left in the lower 48 states. Wolves were thriving in Idaho, and our population at one point, Fish and Game estimated that we were at 1,500. It may have been larger than that before the removal of federal protection occurred. So I'm going to share with you just some information about what's happening in Idaho, because we know that all wolves' lives matter, that they're all just precious and beautiful, and you'd fall in love with the ones here in Idaho as well if you knew them. So I'm going to talk about those guys, and let's see here, see if I can't share my screen. And we'll get started with, I can move this over. Move the bar on the top. Okay, Allison, it might be your first, oh, there we go. Okay. Oops. That's not what I want. I don't want a mouse. I want to stop that. I'm your first technical difficulty, Allison. Okay, let's go from here. Okay, so as Rick was talking about the bounties that are occurring in Montana, those actually started here in Idaho, and they were part of the efforts underway by a private group called the Foundation for Wildlife Management. They don't like calling it a bounty, but as you can see from their bounty poster, this is exactly what it is. And that bounty has gone from $500 originally up to $1,000, and now we're at $2,500 per wolf, and it doesn't matter the age. This is the state's wolf population, and let's go back to that. In comparison with the other animals in our state, so we have over 105,000 elk. I think the estimates are up to 130,000 now, around 40 to 50,000 coyotes, close to 30,000 black bears. There's about 5,000 cougar in the state, and somewhere, we don't know where at this point, perhaps 1,000 wolves, perhaps it's down to 500 at this point, and that's statewide. This is the map from Idaho Fish and Game, and in the map you can see that these little pinpoints are where they've been able to detect wolves around the state. The camera locations, this central area here, which I'm trying to get back to this annotate thing and draw this for you. Hopefully it won't stop it from occurring, but this is the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness area here in the center of the state, and where you find originally the core of the wolf population. So if you turn your attention over to the map on the right, that is the colors in those areas are where in the blue, the bounty per wolf, no matter the age, pups in the den, doesn't matter. is $2,500 per wolf. And these are game management units here. The game management units are large. They often contain multiple packs of wolves, and they contain tens of thousands, sometimes, of livestock. We have each game management unit where they place the blue coloring is based on one single livestock depredation due to wolves in that area. So for only one offense during the course of an entire year, all the wolves in that area are being killed for bounties of up to $2,500. And again, no matter the age. The yellow areas are also predator management areas. Some of those are where they actually go in and do aerial gunning of entire packs. So they'll go in and collar wolves and then follow them in the wintertime and kill entire packs of wolves because they are concerned about the 130,000 plus elk that are living in Idaho. And not enough to share with the wolf population. Okay, and then let's see here. This is the data that we received from Idaho Fish and Game, and the reason that I'm so deeply concerned about the loss of our population of wolves here in Idaho. At one point, we had, again, the highest population in the region. And then when Idaho Fish and Game took over in 2011, when the Fish and Wildlife Service, through a congressional action, delisted wolves under federal protection, you can see the numbers start going up in terms of wolf mortality. And those mortalities occurred at very high levels, especially going into 2018, when over 400 wolves per year were being killed. This year we had 500 wolves, which was very similar to what we had last year. And that's just the known loss of our wolves. Now, Idaho Fish and Game estimated that we had 786 wolves in our state in 2015. And we know that wolves cannot sustain this kind of high aggressive mortality without the population crashing. So we're all here to ask, what can we do to help wolves? And it is imperative right now that we pay attention to what's going on with the Fish and Wildlife Service. This is the most important thing we can do for wolves in the Northern Rockies. And I want to talk to you about the history of this a little bit, because there's an open public comment period occurring right now. When we brought wolves into Yellowstone in Idaho, over 100,000 people made comments asking for the restoration of wolves. And I want you to understand, this was in 1994, 1993, 94. That was before we had emails, before we could send in, comment letters just by our phone. These comment letters came in by regular mail. People taking the time to just write out what they were thinking, to attend public hearings. Thousands of people did hear from the region. So then last 2 years ago, for the national wolf relisting, when that opened up, the Fish and Wildlife Service received 86,000 comments. Now, the comments regarding the national wolf relisting do not affect wolves in the Northern Rockies. Because Congress delisted wolves through a congressional action in 2010, that means that our wolves were exempt from the ESA, and so they're not part of the national wolf relisting litigation that's occurring right now. Our comment period opens September 17th for the Northern Rockies wolves, and we're hovering at about 40,000 comments so far. Before the end of January, we are hoping to get that number increased substantially. We want to make sure that as many people as we can reach out, make comments, encourage others to do so. And we're going to show you how. So in the chat, we're going to put a link that gives you a way of going straight to the comment link for the Fish and Wildlife Service, where you can encourage, and please state this in your comments, an emergency listing or an emergency relisting for wolves in the Northern Rockies. We have a video that we're going to share with you at the end that features Senator Cory Booker, who's been an absolute champion for wolves, as well as Jane Goodall and others who are voicing their concerns about the restoration of the relisting, federal protection for wolves. And then writing personal letters. If you don't have time to write a personal letter, you can send an email, you can make a phone call, but those personal letters we know make a really big difference. And then recruiting others to submit comments. This is a race right now. And it's not about that the Fish and Wildlife Service looks at this as like a numbers game, you know, that just the numbers alone mean something to them. It's not about that, you know, we can get to a certain number and they're going to do relisting. What it does is it shows, is the public interested? Is this an issue of interest to the public? And if so, the number of comments do reflect that public interest. So it's really important that we get those comments in, and we get them, and we get a great deal of them through all of our connections. In your own words is best to reframe it, but we have a number of websites that can help you as far as like, you know, different types of talking points. So, you know, again, the baseline message is, I urge you to emergency relist wolves now. We can talk about that 21 Yellowstone wolves are already dead, being baited out of the park, being in the wrong place, but so close to the park that they don't know the boundaries here. And that they have a complete lack of fear. This is, you know, they're used to seeing people. This is really akin to someone, you know, Idaho's bounty program, up to $2,500 per wolf, and that includes entire packs. So just recognize that, you know, this, when wolves have 6 to 8 pups in their litter, that a litter of pups can bring in $15,000, $20,000 to someone. And they are sitting ducks in the springtime because Idaho Fish and Game is sharing not only the information on where they've done before in the past, but they're sharing the radio collar telemetry with these guys so that they can have an easier way of tracking these wolves and killing them. This is not hunting. And I think that's the thing that we need to get across to our leaders, that this is not hunting. This is extermination. It harkens back to the last century, and it is exactly how we lost wolves in the West because of this aggressive effort to exterminate the species. I also was reminding the service of their 2009 rule. They made the promise that if a state changed their regulatory framework to authorize the unlimited and unregulated killing of wolves, that they would pursue emergency relisting immediately. That's exactly what Idaho is doing right now, and Montana is on the fast track to do the same thing. Where are they? Where is Secretary Folland? Why haven't they made these decisions to move forward with emergency relisting now? What are they waiting for? That's it from me. I'm going to pull back on and then turn this back over to you, Carol. And then I know we have some information at the end to summarize as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Suzanne. I did notice one question in the chat. Somebody asked if you can make more than one comment, or is it just one comment per person that's allowed?
You can make more than one comment, but they will be looking for duplicates. So we know that they've already eliminated some of the duplications, but make sure that your comments are different than their initial ones and it won't be dismissed. Thanks for a good question. School kids can comment. Everybody can comment. Your grandmother, you know, every single person out there, your comments matter on this because you are the voice for those that can't speak and can't tell people what's happening.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Rick. You both did a wonderful job informing us of what's going on in the Northern Rocky Mountains. I'm just flabbergasted. My mouth just wants to drop with everything that's going on, and you painted a real clear picture. So thank you both. Wolves are not only under pressure in the Northern Rocky Mountains, but we have national delisting going on too. So Dr. Adrian Trevis is going to tell us, give us a little broader view about what's going on across the country. Dr. Adrian Trevis is considered one of the most foremost authorities on ecology, law, and human dimensions of ecosystems in which crop livestock ownership overlaps the habitat of large carnivores. He authored over 133 scientific papers on predator-prey ecology or conservation. Dr. Trevis earned his PhD at Harvard University in 1997 and is professor of environmental studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and director of the Carnivore Coexistence Lab since 2007. The title of the talk by Dr. Trevis today is The State of Science About Liberalizing Wolf Killing.
Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for that introduction. It's a privilege to be here, Carol, Suzanne. Thank you, everybody. Good evening for making time for this. I was invited here to talk about the science behind liberalizing wolf killing. And just so people understand, scientists have something to say when policies include claims of facts. Fact claims are those assertions of fact by a government making policy that is totally in the wheelhouse of scientists to evaluate. For example, the claim on the wanted poster that Suzanne showed you that killing wolves is going to help protect livestock. That's a fact claim, and it's the kind of thing that my colleagues and I dig into when we're invited to give presentations like this. I'm joining you from Madison, Wisconsin. There are wolves in my state and in my region and in portions of 10 states in the US now. They're also found around the world. And I'm going to bring you some summaries of the best available science from around the world, from dozens of scientists and dozens of countries tonight, or at least I'll try to do that. Let me see if sharing screen is going to work for me tonight. No. Okay, hold a sec. Thanks for your patience.
Adrian, can you talk a little louder too? Some people are mentioning they're having a little bit of a hard time hearing.
Sure. Don't want to sound angry or anything, but I'll talk a little louder. So in collaboration with Dr. Jeremy Bruscotter of Ohio State University, we did a review of the state of the science about those fact claims about liberalizing wolf killing. And this is freely available to anybody off of my lab website. And I believe Carol and Suzanne will make it available to participants or already have. Very briefly, governments around the world typically make one or more of the following 4 fact claims to try to justify liberalizing wolf killing. The first claim is that it'll protect human safety. Second one is it'll protect wild game like elk or deer. Third one is it might protect domestic animals, livestock, typically. And the fourth one is wolf killing may raise human tolerance for the surviving wolves, for their conservation. So we've examined these 4 fact claims using peer-reviewed evidence, only peer-reviewed evidence from around the world, wherever wolves occur, and by researchers of all stripes. And for the first one, protecting humans, it might be the case, but there's really no scientific study of whether liberalizing wolf killing is going to protect human safety. On top of that, yeah.
Sorry, but people are still unable to hear you very well. I wonder if there's a way to turn your volume up, that because what you're saying is so important. I don't want them to miss it. And others are hearing just fine, so maybe it's just a few of us. Sorry about that.
Oh, no. Thank you for telling me.
And we can all turn up our volume too.
How's that?
And I
Is that
think,
any louder?
I think if you
How's
have
that?
headphones, that helps too if you're listening from.
Can you hear me better now, Suzanne?
You're
Suzanne, can you hear
talking
me better now?
softly, but I think we got you. So we'll just all turn up our volume too.
Thanks. Sorry about that, folks. I'm booming in my own room, so don't want to disturb the household. I'll try to project a little bit more. So I was trying to say that there are 4 fact claims commonly made by governments around the world to try to justify liberalizing wolf killing, trying to justify some sort of benefit for human society. The first one is that wolf killing might protect human safety. The second is it might protect wild game like deer or elk. The third most common, or actually even more common, is it would protect domestic animals like farm animals, livestock, etc. And the fourth is that wolf killing would raise tolerance for the surviving wolves for support for conservation. So we've examined only the peer-reviewed evidence from around the world collected by dozens of scientists working in dozens of countries. And for the first fact claim, we really don't find any evidence. It basically hasn't been studied, partly because attacks on humans are so exceedingly rare. The conditions for them are almost never met in the 20th century, and definitely even less so in the 21st century. So using that as a justification for widespread wolf killing just doesn't seem to be meaningful public policy. The second one, for protecting wild game like deer or elk, there's a recent synthetic review of this by Doctors Clark and Hebblewhite that indicates there's a high variability in how killing predators might affect wild ungulate populations like those of deer and elk. Killing predators can even lower the abundance of the wild game population. And there's a clear scientific consensus that the major factors that affect populations of deer and elk and moose are things about habitat quality, climate, and disease, not predators, except in extreme and unusual circumstances. When it comes to protecting domestic animals, the literature is becoming more and more clear now. There's a scientific consensus. The majority of studies find no protective effect of killing wolves. There's a minority of cases where killing wolves might help protect livestock, but an equal or even larger minority of cases where livestock losses actually increase after wolf killing. And that appears to be due to disruption of the social network of wolf society. And finally, raising tolerance among people for surviving wolves by killing wolves, that's been disproven in study after study, in particular our longitudinal research in Wisconsin, where we resampled the same people living inside and outside of wolf range. We asked them again and again over time, as policies for liberalizing wolf killing changed, how was their tolerance of wolves? And we found every time that tolerance decreased. And we started to find evidence now from 4 wolf populations that poaching, illegal killing of wolves, increases when the government liberalizes legal wolf killing. Poaching increases. There is no peer-reviewed evidence in support of the social tolerance hypothesis. All right, so if we have all of this science that's undermining the fact claims, then there must be something else that some other reason governments are calling for such liberal, widespread, extensive wolf killing that can put a population at risk. And that's not really the province of scientists. So when governments start using value judgments, we can't evaluate them the way we evaluate fact claims based on evidence. Value judgments have to be evaluated using values. That's where the public comes in. That's where you folks come in. However, scientists can demand that government make their value judgments transparent. Don't create smoke screens with these fake fact claims, these myths, assumptions, and lack of evidence. Just state clearly what the values are that's driving this wolf killing. And I want to give you an example from Wisconsin that makes a couple of points. One point is that what's going on in the Northern Rockies is going on in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. We can learn from other states to help inform work, policy, activism in the Northern Rockies and vice versa. And so I want to describe a little bit of what happened in Wisconsin starting in 2021 after the Trump administration removed wolves nationwide from the federal list of protected species. That is, the wolves outside of Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming lost their Endangered Species Act protection on January 4th, 2021. In a little over a month, a state court ordered the state of Wisconsin to hold a hunting season in a very rushed and poorly planned way. 218 wolves were killed in under 70 hours, and an uncounted but estimable number were killed illegally. We estimated that the wolf population in Wisconsin was knocked down more than 27 to 33% in a single year. And unfortunately, that hunting occurred in February, in 3 days in February, with heavy snow on the ground. That's during the wolf breeding season, when wolves are particularly vulnerable to hunters using guns, nighttime hunting, snowmobiles, traps, and hounding. And under those conditions, you're going to destroy the reproductive potential of your wolf packs. And unfortunately, the state collected no data on reproductive success this past summer after that drastic February hunt. They collected no data on poaching. And then the state proposed a second wolf hunt in November 2021. That's exactly what's going to be happening in Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, with killing going on now during the wolves breeding season, during the snow-covered and leafless period when wolves are highly vulnerable. And it's going to destroy the reproductive potential of those wolf packs for over a year, as Rick alluded to. And if they propose another of these wolf hunts in the fall of 2022, you're going to see what we started to see in Wisconsin as the next slide shows. So what I've done here is on the horizontal axis with all the numbers, that's the estimate of the Wisconsin wolf population this April 2022. And so the gray bell-shaped curve shows our estimates. And it's really uncertain because the state didn't collect information on reproduction. It's also hovering right about the state wolf population goal of 350, but it could be dropping down to 250, the state listing level, where the state would need to list the species as threatened or endangered in the state of Wisconsin. If we have more killing, we may see statewide extirpation of our wolves. The uncertainties created by the state's failure to collect information, and they're ignoring the best available science and the precautionary principle in calling for a second wolf hunt. However, a state court decision put a stop to the 2021-2022 wolf hunt at the moment. And we're going to see if the state starts to reform its use of science. So we have a lot to learn from each other, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the peer-reviewed evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian.
Were you able to hear most of that?
Yeah, we could hear you. Thank you so much for adjusting with us here.
Sure. Thank you.
Are we opening up for questions and answers now?
I think we are. Yep. And we also have more information to share that we're going to be putting in the chat as well. So please don't leave without getting the information on how to make comments, because you are the only ones right now that can speak for wolves. You and the other wolf advocates around the country, and we really need you speaking up for the Northern Rockies wolves at this point, because that's the only comment period that's open. So let's move over to Allison. Are you gonna?
Yep. So if anyone has any questions, please add them to the Q&A feature so that we can answer them there. All right. I think this is pointed at Adrian from Erica. Is there a study that you can share that supports the suggestion that livestock predation by wolves increases with more wolf hunting and killing in that area? It would be great to share those studies with people suggesting hunting wolves saves livestock. Thanks.
Yeah, we've got a study from Michigan by Dr. Francisco Santiago Avila from 2018. It's free on my website. I guess that's a link that the organizers might please share. And there's new PhD research out of France by Dr. Oksana Grent that I hope will be published in 2022. And they agree largely with each other. So studies from Michigan and France are showing that in a majority of cases, there's no benefit of killing wolves. And in a minority of cases, you have higher livestock losses. Thank you for that question.
All All right, from Paige. As a parent of an almost teenage child who is looking at becoming a wolf conservationist, what do you suggest we do to ensure proper education on the topic? How can they get involved? How can they help?
Oh gosh, that's a great question, and it's really broad. There are some fantastic environmental teachers around the country, different programs that offer, tracks on environmental education. Just the number of books that are out there. I mean, I would start with like Rick's books on just the experience of it being in the park, so they get that sense of nature. There's videos, all kinds of things that that can help with explaining. Yeah, even going back, many, many, many moons ago, some of the first books that came out are still standalone, fantastic books to share. And that's Barry Lopez of Wolves and Men, still one of the most outstanding books I think it was ever written about wolves. And there's so many great resources. But I think what we can do is when we circle back with everyone and send you, if we have your email address, we'll send you links to everything that we've presented tonight. And then we also have links to different websites, and there's just a ton of resources out there. So I'm glad you're asking that we've got youth that are carrying this with us, because it is their generation that's going to really decide kind of the fate of our planet, and certainly of these wolves.
Thank you, Suzanne. This is from Louise. What is the difference between national relisting of wolves and the relisting of Rocky Mountain wolves?
You got me, so want me to grab that one again? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so in 2009, 2010, there was a congressional listing or appropriations bill passed through Congress that exempted wolves from endangered species protection in the Northern Rockies. And that rule, that law, then exempted them from ESA protection across the United States. So when the Fish and Wildlife Service moved forward on doing a national wolf relisting, the only place they were not looking at was the area exempted in the Northern Rockies, the whole Northern Rockies. So that's Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Northern Utah, Eastern Oregon, and Eastern Washington, this whole unit here. And that's where wolves were not affected at all about with the national relisting. So making comments now on just the Northern Rockies is the only way to affect wolves here in our region. And the national is under litigation right now. So there are a number of lawsuits that are targeted at the service. And I think that there's a judge's ruling that's expected on that sometime in the next few weeks, months. But right now there is no litigation on Northern Rockies wolf relisting. It is because we're in an open comment period, and the best thing that can happen for them is for the secretary, who could tomorrow, with a stroke of the pen, say that wolves in the Northern Rockies have emergency protection. She has broad authority to do that. It goes into immediately a 240-day period where wolves cannot be killed by the states or through hunting. And it gives states time to take a break. It takes the pressure off the wolf population, and it gives us time to go back to the states and ask them what the heck they're doing, because they made the promise to maintain viable, healthy, interconnected wolf populations here in this region. And they are the ones that broke the promise. So it's time to hold them accountable.
Thank you, Suzanne. All right, I have a question for Rick. This is from Kate. Rick, could you repeat when the 3-year-old from the Wapiti pack was killed? She was not aware of that.
Oh, yeah. That was January 1 of, so a few days ago. And by the way, there was another Junction Butte wolf identified tonight as having been killed. So there's one more even as of tonight.
Thank you, Rick. All right, this is from Christy. Suzanne, with the elk numbers going up and the wolf numbers going down, has there been any impact on rivers or streams?
Well, we would know that more so in Yellowstone, where there's a lot of research going on as to the impact of all of these species within that ecosystem. Yellowstone is one of the most studied areas in our country, and but Idaho, we can extrapolate that that the good things that are happening on the ground in Yellowstone are happening where there are wolves in Idaho, but there's not the amount of research there and data to back that up. So I would point everybody to Yellowstone if you're looking for that kind of data, because they're just not, we don't have a national park in Idaho. We have a national federal wilderness area, and it's the largest wilderness area in the lower 48 states. So, but there's not a lot of research going on, especially positive research about wolves. There's a lot of kind of anti stuff happening with wolves.
Could
All right.
I address that one?
Mhm.
Sure, you can please.
There's also a lot of interesting research. It's a little bit early days, preliminary research coming out of Wisconsin that shows that counties that contain a wolf, one or more wolves, will have fewer deer vehicle collisions. That'll save millions of dollars in human lives. So that's to the credit of wolves if those results are confirmed. And we're finding understory plants that are surviving. They're managing to persist because deer are scared at the center of wolf pack territories. So some endangered understory plants like Trillium. We're also finding that forests that have healthy wolf packs are more mature, have a better structure, higher biodiversity, and are more resistant to non-native plants. That's the research of Jennifer Rayner on vehicle collisions, Dr. Callan on understory plants, and Dr. Waller on the forest structure. Thanks for letting me jump in.
Adrian, somebody asked if you could repeat that stat on deer vehicle collisions.
Yeah, sure. Dr. Jennifer Rayner showed that counties that have one or more wolves in them have significantly fewer deer vehicle collisions than counties without any wolves. And that's totaled to millions of dollars saved on vehicle property damage, right? And also therefore human fatalities, because those deer vehicle collisions are dangerous, as you know.
I believe there were some national stories on that study itself. So if you go in and just look for the news on that, on the collisions and wolves, I think you'll find it, because it got some great coverage in the press.
Thank you. So the next question, now that chronic wasting disease has made its way to Idaho and wolves do prey on the weak, do you think that this will have an impact at some point with legislation and so-called hunters?
Well, this is Idaho. We have, a different mindset in this state, and it's a tough place to be a wolf as well as a scientist. We don't have any scientists, to my knowledge, that are working at the high levels of Idaho Fish and Game. Certainly, scientists were not making decisions when it came to the state legislature, changing the laws on wolves and essentially stripping all protection from them. I think that they have demonized wolves to the point where they're not willing to accept that wolves provide economic and environmental benefits, which they clearly do in other areas, and they clearly are in Idaho. And if you look at just the overreach that's happened right now, where the state, we probably have about $100,000 in loss to wolves for cattle each year. We probably have about the same amount, just a little under, for sheep statewide. But the state is spending millions of dollars to kill wolves. And it has restricted through legislation that none of this money can be used for non-lethal methods, which we know are more effective over the long term in reducing livestock losses to wolves. So it doesn't seem to be about livestock. It doesn't seem to be about elk, which our elk numbers are higher now than before when wolves were reintroduced to Idaho. So if it's not about elk and it's not about wolves or about livestock, I'm not sure that they would care about disease. And we're seeing not only chronic wasting disease, but brucellosis has now been detected in elk herds in Idaho. And so it's, there's plenty of reasons to be supporting a healthy, vibrant, viable wolf population if you care about elk and you care about the ecosystem. But I'm not sure that that message is translating to our legislature.
I'd like to add to what Suzanne just said, also that in Montana, I've spoken to the legislature, I've spoken to the Fish and Wildlife Commission, And I've been to these meetings where CWD has come up and been presented by wolf advocates trying to say, you know, wolves are valuable. They can actually help protect these elk that you worship. And it literally just falls on deaf ears.
Yeah, it's to the point where it doesn't matter. I think that that wolves are having a positive influence both economically as well as environmentally here in the region, and you know, they bring in millions and millions of dollars annually to tourism into our region at a time when, you know, we didn't have those kind of numbers coming through, or that recreation and tourism support before wolves were on the ground here. So it's become very politicized.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, you know, we're talking about sending these messages to the president, to Secretary of Interior, to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I really think that's where the messaging has to go. I mean, Montana has a governor, a legislature, a Fish and Wildlife Commission, and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks that are essentially anti-wolf. We're not going to change that. The only way to change that is to make it illegal to kill the animal.
The only thing that's going to save them.
So I have a question from Fred. Fred is asking if there is any science justification for the 350 number as a viable population number.
The 350 for Wisconsin, because it's
Yeah.
only 100 to 150 in Idaho and Montana, each state are, yeah.
200 in Michigan.
Yeah. Normally when animals occur at that number, they're being positioned to be listed as an endangered species. I mean, that's a very low number for any species to be at. So it's 350 is certainly better than the 150 we have for 10 breeding pairs in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. I think that there was not the use of best available science during that time when those numbers were brought up, that they were I mean, I even know, going through the peer review comments here in the Northern Rockies, that the Fish and Wildlife Service didn't ask the peer reviewers, is this a viable population? What they asked is, will these state wolf management plans achieve what the state wolf management plans say that they're going to do? And so that you know, question of what is viability in terms of a population really wasn't answered, and it was changed. You know, they moved the goalpost because originally the service had said 10 breeding pairs in each of the 3 recovery areas for 3 consecutive years with breeding activity in those areas. And we didn't reach that number till we had 1,500 wolves in the region. So, you know, well, I think it was 1,200. And then later on, they readjusted it down. So it's 450 wolves or 300 wolves for the entire region. Is just, there's no way that it could be supported by science.
If I could add to that, also illegal killing is the major cause of death of wolves. So for every one legally killed, there's going to be at least 1, sometimes 2 that are illegally killed. So these numbers, 350, 400 that Suzanne's discussing, and Wisconsin's population goal, are not secure. They're not safe. So it's funny for a scientist to say this, but we can't actually fight these policies with facts for the reasons Rick and Suzanne mentioned. But the facts sometimes play a role with the politicians that agree with you. So hold on to both the facts and the value arguments.
Good advice.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. If you do speak with your legislators and you find some that are at least willing to listen, even if they're not completely pro-wolf, but if they're willing to step out and make a statement in support of wolves, you need to bring people to that room to support them. That was the lesson that Carol and I learned so much here in Helena, was that we had to fill the room with pro-wolf people and say, it's not just 2 or 3 people here saying this. We've got people from various states coming here to say, don't do this. That was, we wanted to reduce that quota to 1 wolf in 313 and 316, and we were able to do that. But one of the reasons that it got done, there were a lot of conservation organizations working on that quota. But one of the reasons it got done was because we found the Fish and Wildlife Commission members who would support it, and we supported them. That is incredibly important.
Yeah, I'm going to put some more links into the chat as well, but I mean, we're not alone, in making this request for emergency relisting. There's been regional tribes, the Nez Perce, the Shoshone-Bannock, 21 US senators, 81 US representatives, Dan Ash, the former Fish and Wildlife Service director and now president and CEO of the American Association of Zoos and Aquariums, more than 70 directors of zoos across the nation, and over 800 scientists, wildlife scientists from around the world, including Jane Goodall and others, are asking for an emergency relisting. We have a video that we're going to share at the end for those that are interested in seeing, but featuring Senator Booker and Jane Goodall and others who are adding their voices to ours. It is time for emergency relisting now.
Thank you, Suzanne. So we have a question from Loretta. Loretta asks, Yellowstone wolves generate millions of dollars a year for the local economy. Is anyone looking at how the loss of these iconic wolves could negatively impact tourism and the local businesses that depend on them?
Yes. That is an issue that gets a lot of press here. In fact, there was just a group of 30 Yellowstone businesses, photographers, guides, and shops in Gardner, Paradise Valley, who sent a letter to Secretary Holland saying, please relist these wolves on a temporary basis. We do feel the impact. There's no question. There's also been a couple studies done, one in 2015 and one in 2016, which shows that the more hunting there is adjacent to national parks, the less wildlife viewing there is within the parks. And so, that's a long-term downhill that we're going to see. And it will eventually affect Gardner businesses and other gateway communities. Quite honestly, with this pandemic right now, we're seeing such an influx of people that I don't think the economic impact is here yet, but I do believe it will be here.
Thank you, Rick. Robin is asking, could you tell us more, any of the speakers, about non-lethal control methods?
I think there's a couple of us that can, but I'll jump in there because we have on the ground one of the longest running non-lethal projects that demonstrates the use of non-lethal across a very large grazing area in central Idaho. So we picked like the hardest place to actually test these methods out. We have about 20,000 sheep in our project area. Every summer they run there for from about the end of May through mid-October. They're overlapping with wolves pretty much the entire time that they're out there. And on average, out of those 20,000 sheep, we lose about 5 sheep a year to wolves. And that's 14 years now and counting. If you look at the areas adjacent to us where they have also sheep and also wolves, they're killing entire wolf packs where we've only lost 2 in 14 years. But they're 2 wolves, but they're taking out routinely entire wolf packs, and their losses are tenfold of what our losses are easily on an annual basis. And they're spending a lot more money than we are to use lethal control of these wolves. It's helicopters, it's people that are doing trapping, and now there's bounties out. So it's pretty a stark difference between the 2 areas. And if we can do this in Idaho, it can be done anywhere. I'll put in a link to it. Go ahead, Adrian, sorry.
I'd love to jump into that one. No, thank you for starting us off. I'm also putting a link to my lab because my lab does randomized controlled experiments. Those are the same trials that like biomedical researchers have to do to get a drug onto the market. They have to prove right? That it's safe and effective, and a randomized controlled trial means half the subjects randomly chosen get a placebo. We do those experiments with non-lethal methods, and one experiment in Alberta's Rocky Mountains with cattle grazed on public lands in a habitat with 5 large carnivores, including wolves and grizzly bears. That project, led by Naomi Lachar, was just completed and showed the success of range riders using low-stress livestock handling methods to protect cattle, no losses during that whole study. And we showed that the technique for that kind of low-stress livestock handling can be taught in a period of like 2 weeks. And the 2 range riders that learned it in that period were equally effective. We've also done experiments against other carnivores using fladry. That's a Polish visual deterrent that's hung from fence lines. And we've tested fox lights against pumas in areas with low human population density. We're starting that kind of research, fladry and fox lights against black bears, coyotes, and hopefully eventually wolves. Elsewhere in the world, people have shown that livestock guarding dogs and fladry are effective in protecting livestock against wolves. So thanks for the question about non-lethals. That's a growth area, and livestock owners have to be told about it, basically, by projects like the Wood River project Suzanne was talking about.
And we're not unique, right, Adrian? This stuff is occurring all over the world. And so these types of tools and methods are being used with wolves in Germany, right, in Israel, all over Europe. And the most important thing is that they're consistently implemented. I think that's the thing that we see when they're most likely to fail, is that someone didn't install it properly, didn't maintain it properly. And it takes a real commitment to making sure that these methods are in place and that they're adequately maintained. But it's not just wolves, it's lions in Africa, it's elephants. I mean, the world of coexistence has burst open as the most growing field in wildlife conservation, and it couldn't come soon enough because of how desperately we need to protect the remaining wildlife that we have on the planet.
Fun fact, cattle could be protected from leopards with spiked collars in Central Asia. And in Southern Africa, they painted eye spots on the rumps of cattle to protect them from lions. So a lot of ingenious people are developing new non-lethal methods out there.
I see more webinars coming out of this.
So we are getting a lot of questions on the federal government input. So I'll take Greg's. After all of the public and congressional input, why do you believe Secretary Haaland and President Biden is not acknowledging or addressing this issue?
Really good question. I think it's stunning that they're not addressing this issue yet. And there are reasons in politics that could potentially be delaying this. She may be relying on the old vanguard at Fish and Wildlife Service who have, there's still people at the top of Fish and Wildlife Service that wanted to delist wolves immediately in the Northern Rockies. And just remember, the quote was, just get them off our plate. They didn't want to have anything to do with wolves because they are a controversial species, and it takes a real effort to manage those controversies. So I think that the service was ready to get out of wolves, that they're very reluctant to get back involved in taking responsibility. And they wouldn't have to if they set the bar right to begin with, which is the most frustrating part. I mean, the conservation community, wildlife community went to the service back in 2008 and said, this isn't going to work. There's too much animosity towards wolves. The writing is on the wall. Idaho is not going to live up to its commitment. I mean, they had 2 plans at the time. One called for 500 to 700 wolves as a minimum population, which was part of the delisting package. And the first thing Idaho did after delisting was rescind that plan. So we have to account for the fact that there's so much hostility in these areas, and they're run by state legislatures that are probably among the most hostile.
So I want to add on to that, Suzanne. For the last, 6 months, I've been conversing with friends and contacts through social media who are saying, you know, what's with Holland? What's with Holland? Why doesn't she do something? Why doesn't she do something? And I've been saying, be patient, be patient, be patient. So just recently, I went back and looked at the hearing that she had before the Senate committee, the statement that she made and the answers that she gave to the senators who asked her questions about how would you manage the Department of the Interior? And I no longer believe we should be patient. I think in terms of wolves, her actions don't come anywhere near to living up to her words. And I believe that's why I want everyone to send these letters to Secretary Holland. She needs to know that we're not happy with this. She is not doing anything that she said she was going to do when she interviewed for this job. That's what it was, a job interview. And, you know, she said, I'll work with both sides of the aisle. I'll work with tribes. She never said she'd work with conservationists, by the way. That word never entered. But even the tribes are unhappy. They've tried twice, tribal leaders have tried twice to get her into a meeting, especially with the leader of the Fish and Wildlife and Service in the meeting, because this one representative, tribal representative, said that the FWS approach to wolves is antiquated. Well, she missed both meetings. So there's a whole lot going on there. I don't know why, but I know we can't be patient anymore.
So Allison, I guess we'll circle back and send out information to everyone that signed up by email and provide links to everything that we had tonight. We've got one more video to show at the end for those that want to stay. And it can be a resource. There's also a lot of other organizations that are working on wolf relisting. We encourage you to find them, support them. All of these groups need your help at this point, because it is all hands on deck right now. Carol, you want to walk us through the last part of this, and then we'll turn it over to Allison here at the end?
Yeah, for sure. Just want to thank everybody for being here. This was something that just came up recently, and to get as many people here and you know, interested in what's going on and wanting to help is just amazing. So I want to thank everybody. As a token of our appreciation from the 06 legacy and in unity for wolves, we have a wristband for every wolf warrior here that wants one. You can wear them proudly for Yellowstone wolves like 06, 926, and 1109, who was just killed in the hunt this year, and all the wolves in the Northern Rocky Mountains, because you know what, in our pack, every wolf matters. So there's our email in the chat, or you can send us a message at the 06 Legacy on Facebook, send us your name and address. And I think in the chat, there should be a photo that's got the 4 wristbands that we have available. Let us know if you have a preference as to which design, and we'll do our best to mail you the wristband you want. So just want to say pause forward, everyone. And Suzanne's going to come and remind you of when the deadline for comments are to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And thank you all for doing everything you can for wolves.
Well, thank you, Carol. Thanks to 06 Legacy, Adrian, Rick, you guys are awesome. Allison, thanks for holding all of this together for us.
Yeah, thank you, Allison.
You're a rock star. We love you. Guys, we have 10 days left. Okay, so we're going to put some things in the chat for you right now, but please remember that let's get our comments in. If you need to reach us, you can contact any of us. We're happy to help you with talking points. And we thank you for being here. And then we're going to leave the last word to Jane Goodall and Corey Booker tonight. And we hope to see you guys out there when we can look at the comments and go, yes, there's Chris's comments. He made them. We're going to go for it. And you know, this made a difference tonight. Get 2 more people, get 5 more people to help you with getting these comments out. And let's not stop. We have to unite as a pack. We have to have each other's backs, and we have to really howl. This is time. This is our time. And we're the voice for wolves.